Recording. There we go. Teams wants me to tell you that I am recording it, so be on your best behavior. All right, so we are on our radius and ulna. This is page B7 in our workbooks. We see both the radius and ulna here side by side. This is the anterior view of our ulna and our radius. And this is the posterior view of our ulna and our radius. The radius is the one with the little wheel-like head at the top here. And the radius is always lateral. That is, it's always on the outside. When we get to the hand next time, the radius is always on the side with the thumb. So whatever side of your arm your thumb is on, the radius is always there. Your thumb sits right down here on the side of the radius. So this is a left ulna and a left radius, as we did a left humerus and a left scapula last week. Right? So the longer one is the ulna, the shorter one with a little wheel-like head, that's the radius. All right. On the ulna here, the top big projection here on your ulna, this is called the olecranon process. Olecranon refers to the back of the elbow. Olecranial is the back of the elbow for those of you who have started in on the anatomical terms unit, right? So this is the olecranon process. This is the point of your elbow, right? So when you hit your funny bone, you're actually stunning the ulnar nerve, which runs here right by the olecranon process. It has nothing to do with your humerus. The olecranon process on the anterior view is this top lip of the hook, and I will show you what that looks like on our ulna when we take a look at it under the camera here in just a moment. There is this big giant cutout, this big giant notch. This is called the semilunar or the trochlear notch. Okay? So you can use either term. Okay, semilunar because when you look at it from the side, it looks like a half moon. Trochlear because that's the notch where the trochlea from the humerus is going to fit into. Okay, so semilunar or trochlear notch. The bottom lip of that hook is the coronoid process. Okay, so the top lip is the olecranon process, the bottom lip is the coronoid process, and in between them is the semilunar or the trochlear notch. This coronoid process is what's going to fit into the coronoid fossa on the humerus when the ulna flexes and our elbow bends. You cannot see the semilunar notch or the coronoid process on the posterior view because they are facing away from you in that view. Below the coronoid process, there is a little bump underneath that lip that is called the tuberosity of the ulna. Okay, tuberosity just means bump. Okay, I know it's not drawn very well in this picture, but it is in this area here just below the lip. You can feel it on the ulna itself, and I will point that out to you when we take a look at the ulna under that camera. On the lateral side of the semilunar notch, there is this little cutout here. This little rounded indentation is the radial notch, and it's called the radial notch because this part of the radius is going to fit right into there. The little wheel part of the radius fits into that radial notch, and that's what allows our radius to be able to spin so that we can pronate and supinate our forearm. We can cause the wrist to roll over. So that's the radial notch. Okay? We cannot see the radial notch on the posterior view, so don't try to label it there. On the radius itself, the little wheel-like projection is called the head. Okay, so that little wheel-like rounded projection at the top, that's called the head. And the head of the radius is going to rotate around in that radial notch. Now, anatomically, if we have a head, we also have a neck. So the narrow part below the head, that is the neck of the radius. Okay. Below the neck, we have this large bump. Okay, that we can see on either side here. We can see it here on the anterior view, or we can see it sticking out on the posterior view. This is the radial tuberosity. The radial tuberosity is a great big projection under the head of the radius. That's actually where your biceps muscle attaches. That's why it's so big. Your biceps muscle is a big and powerful arm muscle. And so it causes the development of that radial tuberosity, that big bump on the radius just below the head. Okay. So that's the radial tuberosity. At the bottom, right, our ulna and our radius come to these tiny little points. Those points are called the styloid processes. So we have a styloid process on the ulna, okay, this little pointed projection here, and we have a styloid process on the radius. It's called a styloid process because a stylus is a writing instrument. And you can imagine, because of these points there, you can imagine that you could use the ulna or the radius like a stylus, like a writing instrument with that sharp point there. So those are the things that we need to label on our radius and ulna. Okay. On the quiz, you are going to see this anterior picture. Why are you going to see this anterior picture? Because that's where we can label everything. Okay. On the posterior picture, we can only label a few things. Okay. So you will get this picture here, and there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things. Isn't that nice? 10 things for you to be able to label. I'm going to give you a moment to catch up, and then we will take a look at these things under the camera, and I will show you how it fits together with the humerus to be able to form our elbow joint. We are recording this so you can come back and watch it as many times as you would like. Okay, I'm going to take these away in 3, 2, 1, so that we can actually take a look at what these guys are under the camera. So if I, oh look, it worked. All right, so this is our humerus. We talked about our humerus last week, right? This is the trochlea, and here is the capitulum. This is where the ulna is going to fit. This is where the radius is going to fit. This is our ulna. Okay? This guy right here. Right? From looking at the anterior view, right? Here's the olecranon process here at the top. Here's the coronoid process here. When I look at it from the side, you can see that semilunar or trochlear notch. Okay? That's the little hook part. That part is going to fit onto the trochlea of our humerus, just like that. Okay. And when we fold that ulna over, the coronoid process is going to fit into that coronoid fossa there. Okay. The radius, okay, here's our radius. The radius has this little wheel-like projection here, the little head, and there's a little indentation in the top of the head. That's going to fit on the capitulum. And it's just going to float over top of the capitulum here. Right? And when the radius folds over top, right, you can see the head of the radius fits into that radial fossa there just above the capitulum. Okay. Let me show you when it's all put together. Okay. So here is the arm from our skeleton, and it's all wired together here so you can see the whole joint here. Right? So humerus with the trochlea and the capitulum. Here's the ulna. Right? You can see the coronoid process here and the head of the radius. Notice that the head of the radius just kind of floats over top of that capitulum so that we can fold our elbow. Right? We can flex our elbow just like that. Right? Yeah. We will do the hand. We'll do the hand next time. Okay, so here's our radius and ulna like they were in the picture. Okay. Olecranon process here. And on the back, this is what forms the point of your elbow. This is the semilunar or trochlear notch. This is the coronoid process here, the lip. Below that, there's this little bump here. This is the tuberosity of the ulna. And the little cutout here, this is the radial notch. That's where the head of the radius is going to fit in. Here's the head of the radius, and you can see that it fits in to that radial notch, and it allows the radius to be able to spin, right, so that we can roll our wrist over. We can pronate and supinate. Here's the head of our radius. Right? There's the neck of the radius, the narrow part below it, and then this large projection here. Right? This is the radial tuberosity. That's where the biceps muscle is going to attach. At the distal end, the far end, right, we have the styloid processes, these little pointed projections. This is the styloid process of the radius. This is the styloid process of the ulna. At the distal end, the radius is big, right, and the ulna is tiny. Okay. At the proximal end, the end closest to the elbow, the ulna is bigger, and the radius is smaller. Okay. Our radius is always on the lateral side, it's always on the side with our thumb, right, and that allows us to be able to rotate that radius over, right, to pronate and supinate. So that is our radius and ulna. Okay. Let me stop showing that, and we'll pause for a moment here as we stop the video.